Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, party people, it's Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 155 of Gridiron Grinder. We've been going strong for 3 years now. And for tonight, we're going to kick things off with Name That Stadium like we always do. Then we're going to hit the news from this past week. After that, we're going to wrap up our four-part whatever series, doing our AFC, NFC North Outlook. And last but not least, we'll close things off with question of the week. And so, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. So, yeah, like I was telling you before the show, we've had a couple of new subscribers. So, special shout outs to Michael Routens and Chelsea King. Thank you for subscribing. We hope you like the show, and been pretty cool, man. We've more than doubled our subscribers over the last couple weeks, and it's like, oh man, we're like reaching peak Gridiron Grinder, man. It feels good. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're what, like 8% of the way to that money.
7.1 to be precise. Yeah, I mean, hey, at this rate, we'll get there in our 90s, but it's all good, man, as long as we're having fun along the way, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And by then, who knows? We'll be like uploaded into the freaking metaverse and it'll be a different world. So, but yeah, enough of that. Why don't we shift over and do some Name That Stadium, man? How about you take that ball and run with it?
All right. As you can see, this is part of the show where I travel around to stadiums that generally host an NFL game, tie it in a little bit to something that week. You first person to guess, get it right, and we'll give you an extra special shout out. We bookmark it. You can sit there and watch it over and over again. Last week we didn't have any takers, and I was in San Francisco. Probably should have picked San Francisco this week based on what some of the stuff in the news, but we were going over the West last week, and I thought San Francisco of the teams just edged out the other two teams I thought were really good and that we were talking about last week, so I picked San Francisco.
Hey, it's all good, man. We can't predict the news, but you had some good logical reasoning for it, and yeah, man, one of these days we'll get a taker. It's been a while, but it'll happen. All right, so let's move on over and do our recap of the past week here, James. Just kind of sticking with the course, I'm going to start things off just by doing a little bit of preseason week 2 takeaways, and I'm just going to kind of burn through them here pretty quick without going too deep. You are obviously free to add whatever you want that stuck out for you. To start off with, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the Cleveland quarterback, the rookie. He continues to impress. He had a solid game against Philly. We're going to talk more about him in a little bit. But man, it's, late round rookie really doing well in preseason so far. Daniel Jones with the Giants. A lot of stuff going on this past week about people raving about his connection with Darren Waller. It looks to be pretty legit. Waller, he's had some issues these last couple of years. People are hoping he can get back to like that sort of superstar tight end, level that he was at a couple seasons ago. So far, so good. Carolina, on the other hand, they're having some serious issues. That offensive line is really struggling. I don't know, man. It seems to me that we're getting awfully close to week 1, and they need to be making some kind of a move here. You got a rookie quarterback who was the number 1 pick in the draft. You need to be protecting that guy. And, we talked about it last week. On paper, when we look at lineups and other sources, Carolina looks pretty good on the offensive line. But
Mm-hmm.
in practice, it's not playing out that way. And so, they got to shake it up here. Atlanta, they are humming on offense. They're not always scoring, but they're moving the ball really well. And Bijan Robinson, he got his first action this past week. People said he flashed the potential, all that. A lot of people are getting excited about what this Atlanta Falcons offense could look like this year. Flipping it back the other way, the Lions, they appear to have serious issues with their run defense. And
Hmm.
that makes me very, very nervous. We retooled the secondary, but if teams can run all over us, it's not going to matter. We're going to have problems. CJ Stroud down in Houston, he had a rough first week against the Patriots. He bounced back this past week, looked a lot better. That's very encouraging. And we talked about it. The Patriots, they've got a pretty good pass rush, and that made it very hard for him as a rookie in his first action. But he'll get better every week, I'm sure. Another rookie standing out, Roshan Johnson, rookie running back in Chicago. He is the other Texas Longhorn, other than Bijan Robinson, that got drafted this year. He's looking really good. And so there's a lot of people saying he's going to be pressing to start sooner than later. And that's with Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman, who were the presumed 1 and 2 there. So we'll see how that shakes out. Jordan Love, Green Bay. Once again, people are saying, hey, he looked pretty good. Keep an eye out for it. I see you already kind of rolling your head around there, James, like, no way. That's okay. Brock Purdy, he also looked good. Last week was his first game action since he had that elbow injury and surgery and everything, and so that's huge for the 49ers. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute with the rest of the news. Jarrett Stidham, this is one, James, that I heard of. I didn't get to go too far into it. Apparently, he took a drive with the starters in Denver this past week. And, some people are saying, hey, what's going on here? Is that a shot across the bow for Russell Wilson or what? I don't know. If you know, maybe you can shed some light on it. No?
Not really.
Okay.
I saw he started, and it's like, really, Russ is he's entrenched there at least to start the season. You can't.
So you think it was a matter of, hey, we're not going to let Russ get hurt. We're just going to put this guy out there. Okay. Yeah. So people just digging up drama. Seattle. We talked a lot over this past year about how they had an amazing rookie class last season, and it really helped sort of like bolster that turnaround. Geno Smith was obviously a huge part of that story in sort of his like resurgence in the league, but they had a lot of rookies stand out last year. And so far in the preseason, it looks like they have another really strong rookie class. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zach Charbonnet, Jake Bobo, and Roderick Thompson are all getting a lot of praise right now. Huge for Seattle. In New Orleans, rookie running back Kendre Miller had a rough week in the first week of preseason, bounced back, looked pretty good this past week. Baltimore, rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers, he is getting a ton of hype after last week's game, which I think last week's game, though, the bigger story, James, and I'm sure you would agree with this, is Sam Howell. He is looking really solid for Washington. And I do want to try to manage expectations. When he played against Baltimore last week, they talked during the game that he was going up against mostly backups for Baltimore. But still, I just think Sam Howell showing a lot of poise in the pocket. He's doing a lot of the right things here. And so that could bode really well for Washington. And so that's my week 2 takeaways, man. Anything else stuck out for you?
One thing, and well, probably a couple things, but one thing that you didn't mention, because there was a lot of hype going into the game, how Baltimore had won 24 preseason games in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And
NFL record.
Last time they lost like a preseason game was like 2016, until a late field goal against Washington, or a late field goal against Washington kicked a late field goal to beat them last week on Monday night, actually. So earlier this week. Outside of that, for preseason, I don't think there, per games wise, I don't think there was much else. What's his face? Lions backup quarterback. not Bridgewater, the other guy. Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Sudfeld?
Sudfeld kind of eliminated the competition for the backup quarterback because he fucking blew.
Well, I mean, we all knew Bridgewater was the guy,
Yeah,
and then it'd be Hendon Hooker next year. So maybe even him start next year. We'll see what happens. But
yeah,
Sudfeld's just there because Hooker's got the red shirt year.
I was surprised as I was going through the news, I was like, oh shit, the Lions preseason games actually on TV out here. So
Oh, right now?
right now, yeah.
Man, I forgot that was tonight, man. They're playing Carolina, right?
Yeah, and I turned it on and I too saw like a bomb and I was like, ah shit, typical Lions. Let me
Well,
but
hey, work out all those bugs now, man, because the hype train's been rolling for a long time with the Lions. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm nervous about it. So
yeah. So the hype train gives me issues too because
yeah,
I want like last year like there was a little bit of hype but not that much.
yeah,
But the throw it was a great throw by Bryce Young. So
okay. All right. Well, here I'll hit other news, not just the week two takeaways. And so the big one, which just happened, James, is that San Francisco quarterback Trey Lance is being traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth round pick. And so it was announced this past week that Sam Darnold had won the QB2 spot, and the team decided it was better to get him out of there. I heard rumors that it was just very awkward in the locker room. He didn't want to be there. It was uncomfortable for other people, and just everybody decided they got to make a move. And so he's going to Dallas, and he'll be backing up Dak Prescott now. Bummer
mhm.
for my man Cooper Rush out of Central Michigan, but who knows? Maybe Cooper Rush will hang on to that two spot, and Trey Lance will be their reserve quarterback since it seems like a lot more teams are going to be carrying a third quarterback this year. But uh, either way, that's the big news of the week.
Yeah, and
Um,
which I thought coming into it, like if we would have done it early, the big news of the week would have been Sam Darnold getting named the backup over Trey Lance.
yeah,
So and that was
because it
just
was
like,
that would have like tipped the hand that something's happening
yeah. Oh, that was another nice throw by Bryce Young. Damn.
against our retooled secondary that I was just talking about.
It was a great no, it was a like perfectly placed throw by I think Bryce Young was still playing to Thielen.
Okay.
It was
So in other trade-related news, I got a handful of stories. One of them is Jonathan Taylor. We know he's been in the news these past couple weeks. The Colts have granted him permission to seek a trade. I'm hearing that so far, 6 teams have reached out. 2 have made offers, but they weren't even in the ballpark for Indy to even think about it. And so,
See, I thought today was the deadline that the Colts gave for.
um, yeah, I mean, if you want to check that, I heard that it was Tuesday, which I think is cut down day.
Oh,
And
it's
so,
okay. It's August 29th. I thought it was the
okay.
25th.
But that, yeah, hey, it's all good, man. So we'll see. It's kind of late in the game to be making a move, but you never know. All it takes is one dance partner, and
Mhm.
anything can happen. So, um, other trade related stuff, we got Josh Dobbs, the QB2 for Cleveland, has now been traded to Arizona. They
Mhm.
sent him along with the seventh rounder, getting Arizona's fifth rounder in return. And like we talked about, that's kind of like part of the Dorian Thompson Robinson news is that
Yeah.
he has elevated to the QB2 spot there, which was good for him. Arizona, very active with the trades. Offensive tackle Josh Jones, they shipped him plus a seventh rounder to Houston in exchange for Houston's fifth round pick. And then they also shipped Isaiah Simmons to the Giants. All they could get for him was a seventh round pick. That one shocked me for how versatile he was on
Mhm.
defense or is on defense. And the high draft pick years ago, I would have thought maybe they could have gotten a little bit more for him, but either way, it was time for a change. And I think for the Giants, there's potential for him. because they need help at linebacker. And realistically, they lost a safety this past year, and he plays a lot of different positions on defense. I'm sure Dable can kind of like push him around and, you know, move him his putty and do whatever he needs to do and get some production out of him while they build some depth on that defense. So,
Mhm.
in injury-related news, we've got Jerry Jeudy suffered a hamstring injury in practice this week. Looks like his status for Week 1 is in doubt. We'll update next week, I suppose, when we do our top 100 review. Jackson Smith-Njigba, the rookie wide receiver for Seattle, he had wrist surgery, and it looks like he's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. Bummer for him, but I think it's going to be okay. You know, he's the number 3 guy there behind Lockett and Metcalf, and so when he's ready, you know, they'll have one of the best wide receiver groups out there. We talked about Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Jimmy Graham. This is a weird one. I didn't get to read the story, James, but apparently he was arrested last week for what is being described as a medical episode. I saw today, and that's the thing, I didn't even hear about it until today, basically saying he's back with the team today after last week's arrest. And just kind of surprised that that one didn't go a little higher on the radar. You know, just I get it, Jimmy Graham's past his prime and all that, but he is a pretty big household name. So,
Yeah, oh, wow.
all right, what you seeing, man?
So Saints team physician said in a statement that Graham likely had a seizure and was disoriented when he was picked up by Newport Beach police on Friday night. He said he was booked with misdemeanor charges of using a controlled substance without a prescription and resisting arrest.
Huh. Using a controlled substance without a prescription. So possibly like painkillers or, you know, prescription Vicodin, something like that, maybe. Hard to speculate, but not like an illegal drug. So
Yeah, I'd missed the arrest, so
yeah,
like
same
like you
here.
said, it
Just crept
kind
up
of
on us.
fell under the radar.
All right, well, we'll see how that one shakes out, but it sounds like he's back with the team, and I don't know, that's freaky. Sam Williams, the Cowboys pass rusher, he was also arrested this past week. His was for possession of a controlled substance and unlawful carrying of a weapon. And I see you laughing. What do you got going on there, man?
So Jerry Jones, did you hear Jerry Jones's comments about it?
No, I did not.
He said that Sam Williams was maturing because he was going 34 miles an hour less this arrest than the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading that.
All right. So it was speeding is why he got pulled over, or was why he
Yeah.
got arrested. Sorry, that's what triggered all of this.
So he said, well, first of all, I'm seeing that he is as, which I don't know, this doesn't make sense. And this, I'm seeing that he is as, which is more often than the case than not. This sounds a little hollow, but he does and is maturing. And he is. What was he going 66 miles an hour? So he's 34 miles an hour less this year than he was last year. 98
Okay.
to 66, so that's improvement.
Okay. All right. Well, at least he's looking on the positive side of things.
Yeah.
Until he gets suspended and yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I wasn't laughing at the arrest. I was laughing because I had just seen an article about it on Jerry Jones's response to it, and I was like, "Oh, I got to see this." And I read it. I was reading it as you were saying he was arrested. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is hilarious."
Craziness. All right. And so my last couple things here, James, I got a couple early player retirements. We've got Corey Davis from the Jets. I guess his isn't officially a retirement. He's saying he's stepping away from the game. He's been contemplating it for a while. He was a early round pick out of Western Michigan to the Tennessee Titans, now with the Jets, and just sort of his whole career's kind of been injury riddled and not really getting over the hump. And then when he was healthy, quarterback issues in New York, and so he's a good wide receiver, not a great wide receiver, but he's always had a high ceiling, just kind of never really got there. It's a step back for the Jets with their wide receiver room, but I still think they're pretty stacked at that position. And there were even rumors within these past couple weeks that Corey Davis might be a camp casualty or a late kind of like trade just because they did want to free up some room somewhere. And so, we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll be back next year or after he takes some time away from the game. And, wide receivers, it seems like they have the potential to play much longer than a lot of these other positions. And so, maybe he'll be back one day. We'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, and then the other one was linebacker Miles Jack from the Philadelphia Eagles, formerly of
I missed
Jacksonville, and was he in Pittsburgh last year? I'm trying to remember. He's either way. At 28 years old, he has announced his retirement, and so he was I believe a first round pick for Jacksonville that kind of was
He was
always
in Jacksonville.
an underperformer, and he was in Jacksonville last year too.
No. Yeah, he was first round pick by Jacksonville, and he was on the Steelers last year. Sorry,
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah,
you were saying Jacksonville as I was about to say
I got you.
he was with Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and I got confused as it was coming out.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and so maybe he never lived up to expectations, but he did have some production. But apparently, with the last 3 years bouncing teams and just things not working the way that he wanted to, he had been contemplating retiring for the last couple of years and decided to pull that trigger, man. So, there's a lot of life to be lived, and so if this isn't your cup of tea, that's okay.
Yeah, which I mean, a lot of players are realizing that now. Like, make the money and get out
Andrew
early.
Luck.
Yeah, Andrew Luck's one of them, but I mean, a lot of players, especially defensive players, linemen, are like Joe Thomas. Not Joe Thomas. Yeah, Joe Thomas retired probably a little bit early. There's another one, but they're realizing, let's make the money, protect my body as much as I can, and
Get out while we still have our faculties and can enjoy life.
Exactly.
Something to be said for that, man. It's a brutal game. Okay, well, that's all I got news-wise, James. Anything that you would like to add, my friend?
Besides what I had mentioned earlier, which will be more on this later since I had the preview of Question of the Week, but the Madden simulation for the season, which apparently the last 3 Super Bowls in the Madden prediction or Madden simulation proved to be correct. And the simulation has Tampa Bay losing to Kansas City in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it seems like a stretch. I want to know how they're doing the simulation, because anybody could just go onto Madden and simulate a season. What is the official simulation? How does that work? And I just want the background of it, because it seems like there would have to be a whole heck of a lot of things go the right way for Tampa Bay and the wrong way for a number of other teams for that scenario to play out.
Okay, so it was apparently this guy Tyler Sullivan did the simulation, and apparently the last 3 years when he simulated the season, it proved to be correct. Some takeaways from it were Dak Prescott winning the MVP and Joe Mixon winning Offensive Player of the Year for the AFC. Anthony Richardson, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and the one that I laugh at for the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jack Campbell.
Well, why do you laugh at it, man? It could happen.
It could happen. I'm
He
not
could
saying
be a
it.
tackling machine, man. We don't know.
So, according to the simulation, he had 116 tackles, one sack, and three interceptions.
It's possible. I'm not, I wouldn't say that that's out of reach, but I don't know. It seems like he would need to do more than that to get the defensive rookie. But
Yeah, and
either way, I mean, we talked about it when we covered the South that my model had such a huge range for Tampa Bay that they are
mhm,
a wild card. A lot of it's based on what happens with Baker Mayfield and the coaching with Todd Bowles. Like there's a few variables where if they click in the right direction, it could pretty much catapult that team to double digit wins. But
mhm,
history's telling us that you're going to get a mixed bag at best, which is going to be single digit wins, maybe, a lower single digit wins or whatever. But
yeah,
so it's not impossible that they could make the Super Bowl. It's just a freaking big stretch, it seems like right now, man. And I would
yeah.
bet that in Madden, I would bet that their team rating is on the lower end. So maybe not because they do have talent. They do have talent with their players. So
Yeah, and like a couple like the Anthony Richardson for Offensive Rookie of the Year in the AFC. It was he threw for in the simulation four I'll call it 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and rushed for 1,999 yards.
and why didn't he win the MVP
Um,
over Dak, man?
because Dak
Dak had 50 TDs.
had 43 touchdowns, completed 70% of his passes, and 5,208 yards, and 279 yards and five touchdowns on the ground. And
It's a simulation. It's a
Dallas was the
simulation.
number one seed in the.
Let's talk to
In,
Elon Musk. Let's get him on the show. How does it work? How do these simulations work, Elon? We want to know.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's funny. There's a little bit more on that because question of the week
Yeah, we'll
is
come back to
has
the we'll come back to some stuff in the question of the week. That's cool.
until the simulation. I had one answer for question of the week, and
Okay.
after reading the simulation, I was like,
Oh, now it's making you think the other
it's
way.
making me think the other
Yeah.
way. So we'll come back to it.
Okay. Well, that's fine. And hey, like I told you offline, I wanted to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because there's been some narrative to suggest some stuff, but that's okay. All right. Let's get to our AFC NFC North Outlook. James, are you ready for this action?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, so just like we've done the last couple weeks, we're going to start off by looking at a review of major roster moves for these teams, and then we'll talk about, what we see for their record potential this year and just whatever else we want to add. And so, starting with the AFC North, we got the Baltimore Ravens. The big question of the offseason was what was going to happen with Lamar Jackson. They ended up hanging on to him. He didn't go anywhere. Um, I mean, they shook it up at wide receiver. Demarcus Robinson, Sammy Watkins, Andy Isabella, they're gone. Brought in Nelson Aguilar, Odell Beckham Jr., and drafted Zay Flowers in the first round. Huge revamp there. A lot of people have been asking, was it the right move? Because we know that Lamar has a tendency to focus on the tight ends and not go outside to the perimeter as much. Looks so far in preseason that it is paying off. Offensive line, they lost Juwan James. That was really the only, I would say, significant move there. Defensive line, Calais Campbell is gone. He's now in Atlanta. On the edge, Justin Houston and Jason Pierre-Paul are gone. They did just recently sign Jadeveon Clowney. it mitigates it at best, but I would say they're down overall in those categories. At linebacker, they drafted Trenton Simpson in round 3. A lot of people are saying that's a really good fit for that defense. They have had issues with drafting linebackers in recent seasons, so we'll see if this one goes differently. And then in the secondary, Kyle Fuller and Marcus Peters are gone, as well as Chuck Clark. And they didn't really go out and backfill them except what was it? When Marlon Humphrey got hurt, they signed I forget who it was. You know what I'm talking about. So, you know, either way, on the defensive side of the ball in particular, the arrow is pointing down. They did have a lot of younger players, like David Ojabo from Michigan that they drafted a few years ago, that they've been expecting big things from this year. Until we see it on the field, it's anybody's guess how they're going to backfill all the talent that they lost. So when I look at lineups and I go top to bottom on their roster, this is a team where you could argue they could use more help at running back, although Lamar runs the ball quite a bit. So I kind of put a question mark by it just because of the nature of the offense. I think they need help at outside linebacker in particular. I think they need help at cornerback, and it's really just kind of temporary because their CB1, sorry, not QB1, is injured for the time being, but he should be coming back earlier in the season.
You're not talking about Kyle Fuller, are you?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so they let go of Kyle Fuller, they brought him back. Yeah. To mitigate that injury.
Wait, no, that was players lost. I'm sorry, Darby, Ronald Darby. I was looking at the wrong list. They brought in Rock Ya-Sin and Ronald Darby.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Okay. And then, and I'm glad you mentioned Rock Ya-Sin because I didn't have him on my list. But, and then if I'm going deep, I think they could get some help at punter too. And so those are pretty much the big moves across the roster. What are you thinking for them with this season, James?
All right. So the entire AFC North has the gift of the schedule. They have the AFC South and the NFC West, which it's 50-50 on decent teams in the NFC West, but the AFC South, like I said, is one of the, talked about, was it 2 weeks ago? The AFC South being one of the weaker divisions in the league. On top of that, for Baltimore, they have a decently easy schedule to start out with. Like they start off with Houston. It's like Houston, Cincinnati, and then it's Indy, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Detroit, Arizona. Like, division games are tough, but their non-division games are the easier games on the schedule. Like, they don't play a decent team until like week 12 in the non-division. I'm excluding the Lions from that list.
Yeah, so you think that'll help them pick up steam, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. And then down the stretch they have like Jackson or San Francisco and Pittsburgh only really after their bye.
Okay. So super early, James. You had them 11-6. What do you think?
I had them at 11-6, and this is going to surprise you. I dropped them down a game.
Okay. All right.
To 10-7, and I'm reconsidering that after what I'm seeing from Zay Flowers, but I have concerns about the running game and, like you said, their defense. It's not the stacked Baltimore defense that we're used to.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And Baltimore went 10-7 last year, so you'd have them on par with how they did last year, of course. Yeah. No real way to compare that just because Lamar was hurt and whatever. But so I had them going the other way in my model. I had them 12-5 in the super early. My model bumped them up one now. I've got them at 13-4. But I do agree with you that the defense going in the wrong direction suggests otherwise. But the model likes it. The model likes what they've done. So, and probably part of it is the schedule, like you're saying, maybe in their favor. And that's a huge thing in the model because there is a momentum factor. And so if it's earlier for that first part of the season, that success will carry forward with them. But okay, so that's Baltimore. Let's go to Cincinnati next. And so Cincinnati at running back, they lost Samaje Perine. Man, they drafted a guy. I know they drafted a guy. It must have been after the third round, which is why I didn't put him on my spreadsheet. But they've got Mixon as their top dog, and they drafted a guy that's going to be the number 2 to Mixon. At tight end, they lost Hayden Hurst. They brought in Irv Smith Jr. I'm not digging that. I think that's a downgrade for him.
They drafted Chase Brown.
Thank you.
In the 5th round.
Okay. And so, yeah, that'll help them. On the offensive line, I think they did well here. They brought in Orlando Brown. They also brought in Cody Ford, but they moved Jonah Williams to right tackle as well. And so when you look at the injuries they had on that offensive line last year, plus the way that they're sort of like reshuffling it and adding Orlando Brown, I think they're going to be really improved on that offensive line finally. On the defensive line, they signed Terrell Basham, sort of underrated, but not a bad signing for him, just helps with depth. They also drafted Miles Murphy in the 1st round to play on the edge. In the secondary, they lost Eli Apple, Trey Flowers, Von Bell, and most notably, Jesse Bates. They did bring in Sidney Jones. They drafted DJ Turner II in the 2nd round. They added Nick Scott at safety, and they also drafted Jordan Battle in the 3rd round at safety. There are some concerns with all of those moves on defense, but when you look at this team on paper, I'm really only seeing weaknesses at tight end, safety, and punter. This is actually one of the better, more well-rounded teams in the league.
Irv Smith doesn't do it for you at tight end?
He does not, of course.
Don't play.
Yeah, with Joe Burrow, maybe it changes. But here's the thing, and I know I've told you this before. It's like him or not, Hayden Hurst had a really good connection with Burrow on converting 3rd downs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I just don't see Irv Smith stepping in and having that same kind of connection. So
no, I know. I was being facetious with Irv Smith.
Hey, I got you. It's all good. And so those are the big changes there for Cincinnati, man. What are you seeing for this team for this year, man? What are you thinking?
So I had them originally at 14-3, and like my thing with them is the league didn't really do them that much of a favor with the schedule because they don't have that area where they can pick up some momentum.
Okay.
Because they start off Cleveland, Baltimore, and then they have a couple easy games, but then they have a bye. And they come out of the bye and they play at San Francisco.
Okay.
And then it's San Francisco, Buffalo, Houston, Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
It's just they have rough stretches in there, and then they finish the season at Pittsburgh, at Kansas City, Cleveland.
Yeah, their schedule is, it seems on paper, a more uphill battle than what you described with Baltimore.
Yeah. But even with that said, I really like what I'm seeing in Cincinnati. I think that they'll have the momentum of coming off like the last couple of years where they've been gaining traction. Yeah, they didn't make the Super Bowl last year, but they were a contender again last year.
Mm-hmm.
They made the Super Bowl the year before, and it's snowballing, especially with getting the offensive line help for Joe Burrow. I'm not as concerned with the schedule, even though it does seem daunting and they don't have that momentum factor for it. I think they'll end up at 14-3. I didn't change them.
Okay.
In fact, based like the at San Francisco, at Kansas City, and then I put in another loss in the division. Those are the 3 games I have them losing.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good to know, James. And so, yeah, I had them at 14-3 in the super early as well. My most updated model drops them down a game to 13-4. Still really solid. And, I think for them, the key is staying healthy and
Hmm.
especially keeping Joe Burrow protected. And the expectations are high for them.
Remind me, what did you have Baltimore at?
I had Baltimore also at 13-4, but Cincinnati beat them on a tiebreaker in my model.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if you said 14-3 or 13-4 for Baltimore.
I got you. I can always share the spreadsheet with you when we're done. After I save it too. So, okay, Pittsburgh Steelers. They're up next, and so Pittsburgh. Let's see.
Pittsburgh's up next.
Oh, thank you. I'm jumping the gun here. Cleveland. Yes, we try to go alphabetical, don't we, James? Thank you. Uh, the Cleveland Browns. I'm just skipping over them. Fuck the Browns. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Don't tell Doug I said that. All right, so the Cleveland Browns at quarterback, they lost Jacoby Brissett. No big deal. Deshaun Watson's obviously their starter. And like we talked about earlier, looks like they found a diamond in the rough with Dorian Thompson Robinson as their backup. At running back, Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson are both gone. I don't like the downgrades at running back. They still have Nick Chubb, and he's a beast, one of the best in the league. But the rest of the running back room now is very unknown and unproven at best. And so we'll see. I'm hearing a lot of rumors that they're going to be playing a lot of shotgun and de-emphasizing the running game this year, asking Chubb to be more of a receiver out of the backfield. To be honest, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach because a lot of their success was the ground and pound and then play action out of it. And so this is going to be a night and day kind of team from what we've seen. At wide receiver, they added Elijah Moore in that trade with the Jets. I really liked that acquisition. I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver too behind Amari Cooper. They also drafted Cedric Tillman in the third round and signed Marquise Goodwin as well. So the wide receiver room has gotten an upgrade. At tight end, Pharaoh Brown is out. He wasn't doing much. They brought in Jordan Atkins, but David Njoku is really the guy there. This is just a depth move. On the defensive line, they added Maurice Hurst, Dalvin Tomlinson, and they drafted Siaki Ika, if that's how you say it, James. Um, that's
Sure.
huge. They need help on that defensive line. They also brought in Ogbania Okoronkwo at the edge position, which kind of helps backfill for Jadeveon Clowney and Chase Winovich leaving. I think they're getting better on the defensive line. Um, I think what was it they signed last year? Preston Smith, I believe. Um, that was like the big, or was it Zadarius Smith? I always mix those two up. So they
That's
got
what
a
I
good
was.
they got a good compliment to Miles Garrett.
It was Zadarius.
Thank you, Zadarius. The issue for them is really going to be at linebacker, and
Hmm.
they did lose Deion Jones. He wasn't much of a factor. The guys that they had last year, they pretty much all got hurt. In the secondary, Greedy Williams is out, Ronnie Harrison's out, John Johnson is out. They brought in Mike Ford and Juan Thornhill. I really like the Juan Thornhill signing. He had a very good season last year with Kansas City. Hopefully that carries over for these guys. Top to bottom on lineups, James. Even though that defensive line is getting better, I still think they need a stronger defensive tackle. Maybe Siaki Ika ends up developing into that guy. But for this season, I think that's going to be a soft spot for him. Dalvin Tomlinson, I like him. He's getting a little bit long in the tooth. Seems like his play has been declining for a few years now. They also have question marks at linebacker, as witnessed last year by the injuries. And really, those guys just haven't really developed and proven to be game changers at linebacker, anyhow. And then also, kicker is a question mark, even though I heard their coach is backing Cade York, and he's shown some good stuff. He just has a very low rating on lineups, and so
Mm.
the kickers and the punters, I know I'm reaching at those, but I do want to point them out. If they're less than a 75 in lineups, I'm calling it out just as a potential liability, James.
Which which makes sense. And with for Cleveland, one thing with them is, well, first, I, I really like Dorian
Thompson
whatever,
Robinson, yes.
Thompson Robinson.
DTR.
I knew he had potential. Being in LA now, I that's all you hear about. But I didn't think he would catch on as quickly as he did.
Hmm.
So our way early predictions, I had Cleveland all the way up at 11-6.
Yes, you did.
And
And you hate Deshaun Watson, so you're tearing it down.
I'm tearing it down. And it's more of a function of, some of it has to do with, I had, and we'll get them in a second. I did have Pittsburgh at 5-12
Okay.
in our way early. Also, like, I kind of look at their schedule, and again, does every team in okay, so Cleveland and Cincinnati come out of the bye playing San Francisco.
It's funny how the schedule maker did that.
And I want to look. Baltimore doesn't, and Pittsburgh no. But every team, okay, and Baltimore and Pittsburgh come out of the bye playing the Rams. The
Oh,
league did Baltimore and Pittsburgh a favor and not
yeah.
Cleveland and Cincinnati.
It's like Baltimore and Pittsburgh are getting a 2 week vacation, is what you're telling me. A
Yeah,
bye week and then a powder puff with the Rams.
exactly. And even, but with out of the bye, it's like they play. Cleveland has some cupcakes coming out of the bye
Okay.
after San Francisco, though. They play San Francisco, then they're at Indy, at Seattle, Arizona.
Yeah, that's a nice 3 game stretch.
Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
still
Well,
gonna
yeah, you
stick
were
with.
11
I'm
and
still gonna.
6.
I was 11-6. I dropped them down by 2 games to 9-8.
Okay. And they finished 7 and 10 last year, so that'd still be an improvement for them. So nothing bad there. I had them at 8 and 9 in the super early. I ended up going the other way, James. I've now got them at 10 and 7, and so we were sort of diverged, but like converged a little bit on Cleveland. In that at 10 and 7, so I've got all 4 teams in the AFC North at 10 wins or higher. It just worked out that way in the model. I don't know why or how. I tried to manually inspect it and find some flaws. It looks pretty legit, so I'm running with it. Although I'm
So
telling you, questioning the Cleveland offensive scheme.
yeah, I have. I'm just 1 game off with you on there. I have all 4 teams in the AFC North at 9 wins or better.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Well, let's get to Pittsburgh then, so you can give me your breakdown on them. And so on the roster, James, Pittsburgh. Let's see, wide receiver. They lost Miles Boykins. They added Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson, we'll see what he can contribute this year. I think the big story at wide receiver for them is going to be George Pickens and his development going into year 2. They've got Deontay Johnson as their number 1. Pickens obviously had some flash plays last year. People are getting excited about that. At tight end, they added Darnell Washington in the 3rd round. I really liked that draft pick. They've got Pat Freiermuth as their starter, who has really developed very well for them. Darnell Washington is an extremely high ceiling tight end that could make for an amazing 2 tight end combo if he gets there. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but it's nice for the future. On the offensive line, Pittsburgh in recent years has had some issues. They went out, they signed Isaac Samalo in free agency, and they drafted Broderick Jones in the 1st round. The early returns on Broderick Jones aren't there. but we got to give him time because he's a rookie. On the defensive line, Tyson Alualu and Chris Wormley are out. They brought in Keanu Benton, drafted him in the second round. Let's see, at linebacker, okay, so yeah, Devin Bush, Miles Jack, they're out. They did a whole lot of signings out at linebacker. Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Tanner Muse, Nick Kwiatkowski, Quan Alexander. They're basically throwing everything at the wall to see what's going to stick. I try to not question it, man. The Pittsburgh way, they've done this for years in the secondary in various positions, and they always find results. So one of these guys will probably step up. In the secondary, William Jackson and Cam Sutton are gone. They brought in Patrick Peterson, and then they drafted Joey Porter Jr. in the second round. Nice little sort of like friends and family pick right there. At safety, Terrell Edmonds, Carl Joseph, they're gone. They brought in Keanu Neal and Tanner Muse. Interesting, they've got Tanner Muse listed at linebacker and safety. And then they also brought in Braden Mann. So when I go top to bottom on their roster, I think they are still soft on the offensive line. Could be better there, could be stronger there. And I do think they need help at defensive end. And so we know that the defense they run, they have a lot of rushing outside linebackers like TJ Watt, but they do still need big, strong defensive ends. I'm not seeing it where they've had that very clear cut these last number of years. Once again, I don't want to doubt Tomlin. He's probably got some guys and got a plan. It's just not showing up on the ratings with lineups as of right now. And so, what are you seeing with Pittsburgh, James?
All right. So with Pittsburgh, I had them. They have them at 5-11 or 5-11 was it? 5-12,
5-12.
Whatever. Because you look at their schedule and they have like, by my estimation, with where I see these teams going, they have a brutal stretch to open the season going in before the bye week, which is week 6. They open the season with San Francisco. They play Cleveland. Then they play at the Raiders, at Houston, and then Baltimore at home. I see them going 1-5 to start the season, and going into the bye week is all the talk is about. Is this the year that Mike Tomlin doesn't have a 500 or better record? Does Mike Tomlin lost it? Blah 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 blah. After the bye, so remember 1-4. After the bye, I have them going 8-4.
Okay.
And finishing the season at 9-8, because that was a beautiful catch. Was that Raymond?
Khalif.
It was gorgeous. He laid out for it. Anyways, so coming out of the bye, they're at the Rams, Jacksonville, Tennessee at home. They have a 3-game home stretch with Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Green Bay. Then at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, Arizona, New England. It's pretty easy after the bye, besides the division games.
Okay.
And so they turn it around. I don't have them making the playoffs, but they are making a push for the playoffs, and Tomlin ends up above 500 again.
Gotcha. Well, that's interesting. So yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so I had them at 11-6 in my super early, and my updated model, James, has them at 12-5. And so it's liking Kenny Pickett. It's I think honestly Pickett's probably one of the big reasons for the boost in my model. But either way, it's 12 is heavy compared to what you've got him at, and man, it's hard to put 12 on any team. So, but if I'm going to do it, it's going to be Pittsburgh, and you know me, I got to stand by my model, man. So.
No, I know. And probably part of it also has to do with the fact that when I have some teams rated higher in the pecking order, shall we speak, than you do, like for instance, I think Vegas is a tougher team than you think. Correct.
Yeah. And I mean, they can be, but I admit that I have a bias there. Yeah, and that that's bad because that can resonate through the model in bad ways. So I hear you. Okay, so that's the AFC North. Let's go to the NFC North. Very sensitive subject for us, James, but let's do it. And so we're going to start off with the Chicago Bears. We're going to do this. Do you want to do it alphabetically, or you want to save the Lions for the end?
Um, let's save the lines for the end.
Okay,
This will be
so
the one we don't do
yeah,
alphabetically.
so we'll save yes, we'll save the Lions for the end. So we'll start with Chicago. Chicago at running back. David Montgomery's out. They brought in Deonta Foreman, but like I mentioned earlier, Roshan Johnson from Texas. They drafted him this year. He's looking really good, and they had Khalil Herbert already anyhow. So I think they're okay, maybe even better at running back. At wide receiver, the big story there was the trade to bring in DJ Moore. At tight end, they added Robert Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis to go with Cole Kmet. That now looks like a very, very strong tight end room. On the offensive line, Riley Reef is out. They brought in Nate Davis and they drafted Darnell Wright in the first round. Offensive line getting better. Defensive line, Armand Watts and Mike Pennell are gone. They brought in Andrew Billings and Rasheem Green. They also drafted Gervon Dexter Sr. in the second round and Zach Pickens in the third round. Improvement there, but we know they've got a lot to do on defense. On the edge, they brought in Demarcus Walker. They lost El Quadin Muhammad. At linebacker, Nicholas Morrow and Joe Thomas are out. This is where they made huge strides. They signed Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards in free agency. At cornerback, they drafted Tyreek Stevenson in the second round. On paper, James, on paper, so here's the thing. On paper, it looks like they could use a little bit of help at running back because the rating on Herbert and Foreman are low, and then Roshan Johnson's a 67 because he's a rookie. I think they're going to be just fine at running back. I think on the offensive line, they are much improved until we see Darnell Wright like really get in gear and get it going. It looks like a little bit of a soft spot on paper. On the defensive line, same thing, except I think it's going to be a longer road to their development with those defensive tackles. And so I think defensive line is a soft spot. I also think they need help at cornerback. And then once again, stretching, they need a punter. What are you seeing with Chicago for this year, James?
All right. We're going to start with, in my way too early predictions, I had them at 5-12.
Yes, you did.
When you look at their schedule, first of all, the league bookended their seasons playing Green Bay.
Yeah, that was weird, man.
It's also another weird fact about it is like their schedule. So they have week 11 at Detroit, at Minnesota, by home for Detroit. Just
Okay.
Their schedule looks weird to me. The NFC North is playing the AFC West and the NFC South, which I think the AFC West is probably one of the better, if not the best division in football, while the NFC South is outside of a couple teams, it's kind of a split division, two good teams, two bad teams. So that doesn't really help them. I just really like what I'm seeing out of Chicago.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of positive things.
Really like what I'm hearing out of Chicago. Enough that I took them from 5-12 to 9-8.
9-8. Okay. Yeah, I like that move. My model took them from 6-11 to 7-10, and I'm leaning more towards you in my gut, where we're hearing so much positivity about Justin Fields, about just the way that offense is humming. If the defense can get in gear at some point, they could be a dark horse team this year. It could happen. I mean, we saw what Jalen Hurts did for Philly, and how that mobile quarterback, if he can get his accuracy up each year, can dramatically transform a team. This could be sort of like that cycle happening with Fields. And so nobody knows, but it looks good so far.
Yeah, it does. And I like Fields, and I think he's going to take a step forward. But when it got down to like the nitty gritty on it, like their schedule was a little bit tougher on the face of it than Philadelphia's was going into last year, and that's why I couldn't take them that far forward.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, Philly stacked all around the roster too. So,
Yeah,
it
true.
is hard to compare the whole team, but yeah, trying to make some comparisons. All right. So then next up, we're skipping Detroit. So we're going to go to Green Bay. The big story for them is that Aaron Rodgers is out. He is now with the Jets. Jordan Love, their, former first round pick from however many years ago, he is
2020.
now thank you. He is now officially their starting quarterback. At wide receiver, they said goodbye to Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard. They drafted Jaden Reed in the second round. They are very, very young in that wide receiver room. At tight end, Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan are gone. They drafted Luke Musgrave in the second round and Tucker Kraft in the third round. So far, I've been hearing good things about both these guys, but you got to take it with a grain of salt. Tight ends usually struggle out of the gate, and it
Hmm.
takes them a while to get their footing in the NFL. On the defensive line, Dean Lowry and Jerron Reed are gone. They didn't really make clear cut replacements for them. At the edge, Justin Hollins is gone. They did draft Lucas Van Ness in the first round. Somewhat of a controversial pick. The guy wasn't a full time starter at Iowa,
Hmm.
but as the draft came to be, he just went screaming up everybody's draft boards. And so there's some potential there that has some question marks, and only time will tell how it plays out. At safety, Adrian Amos is gone, and at kicker, Mason Crosby is gone. So quarterback is the big question mark for them. If Jordan Love is decent, they could be okay. If Jordan Love is what we've seen from Jordan Love to date, it could be a problem. I do think even with their, you know, drafting of wide receivers, they went after Christian Watson last year, Romeo Doubs, and now Jaden Reed. I do like those three guys, but I think they need a wide receiver one. Maybe one of those guys will step into that role this year. I mean, one of them will be forced to, but you know what I mean. They need a
Hmm.
legit wide receiver one. And then at tight end, it would be good for them to have a veteran presence there. Rolling with two rookies is just risky, in my opinion. And then help at safety for sure, and a kicker and a punter. So special teams are lacking in Green Bay. What are you thinking, James? You got to stop and take a drink. That's just pop, right?
Ah, wish it was stronger. I left that downstairs though. Okay, so last year, I'm trying to remember. I
Eight
had
and
them
nine.
in there way
Oh,
too
sorry.
early at 3-14.
Yes.
Last year they were 8-9. With Aaron Rodgers, no talent on that offense. Oh, Jordan Love is doing great in the preseason. Jordan Love fucking blows in the preseason. Like
Okay.
seriously,
Okay.
don't come at me with, oh, that was a sweet interception. Sorry. Who is that? Oh, that's an awesome interception. Lucas. Wow.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all good.
So I don't know the players. I just happened to see it out of the corner of my eye. Lucas like laid out in front of the wide receiver that like right on the goal line, laid out and caught the ball, intercepted it, stopped
Nice.
Carolina from
Nice.
scoring. But anyways, um, Jordan Love fucking blows. Good news for Green Bay. there's going to be a quarterback that will be available with the number one pick because, yes, Green Bay will have the number one pick in the draft this year.
Oh, okay.
Caleb Williams, who is already a better pro than Jordan Love.
Gotcha.
I have Green Bay going 1-16.
Oh my gosh, the way you were talking earlier, I thought you were really gonna go hard the other way.
1-16. I'd their probably one win is when they play the Rams at home in week 9.
Yeah. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut, right? That's the kind of thing you're thinking here.
Yeah. And 1-16 is generous
Yeah.
for how bad I think this team is.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. So you dropped him 2 games. I had him at 6-11. My new model drops him 2 games as well, and so I've got him at 4-13. Um, I do see arguments for them to be better than that, but it all depends on Jordan Love, and so we can talk more about that later. But yeah, so I've got him at the bottom of the NFC North at 4-13, James. Okay, next up we got the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, for some reason, did not trade for Trey Lance, even though they are supposedly going to let Kirk Cousins ride out this year and then see you later. Adam Thielen, gone at wide receiver. They drafted Jordan Addison in the first round. I like that move. Let's just see how quickly this guy can get his feet under him. He's going to be backing up Justin Jefferson. That'll make his life easier. But Thielen was a vet. There's a difference. At tight end, Irv Smith Jr.'s gone. They signed Josh Oliver. Irv Smith didn't do much. Josh Oliver's backing up Hawkinson. It's not a huge deal. Dalvin Tomlinson's gone on the defensive line. They added Dean Lowry. More importantly, though, at the edge, they signed Marcus Davenport. I like that signing. At linebacker, Eric Kendricks is gone. They didn't really do a good job backfilling him, in my opinion. And then in the secondary, they got a whole slew of guys that are gone. Cameron Dantzler, Patrick Peterson, Duke Shelley, and Chandon Sullivan. They brought in Byron Murphy. I really liked that signing. They brought in Joejuan Williams. Could be okay. And they drafted Mekhi Blackman in the 3rd round. So they got a work in progress on defense. And I don't know. I think their defense is going to be a problem, in my opinion. But when you look at their roster on paper, you've got Alexander Mattison at running back. Depending on your thoughts on him, it looks like a little bit of a soft spot on paper. I like him. I think they'll be fine there. At defensive tackle, I think they've got a very clear hole. At linebacker, I think they have a very clear hole. And then at cornerback, I think they have talent, and Byron Murphy can be their one, but they need some clear-cut guys to back him up. Aside from that, they're another one of these teams that I think is going to have special teams issues. Kicker, punter, on paper, don't look good. And we know that special teams can be the Achilles heel, James. And so what are you seeing with Minnesota, man?
So last year, Minnesota was, what were they, like 11 and
Dude, 13
6?
and 4, James. Fucking fluke ass 13
Fluke-ass.
and 4, and then just got embarrassed in the playoffs.
So what it looks like to me when I look at Minnesota's schedule is the league was fucking pissed at how embarrassing Minnesota looked in the playoffs. Because yeah, they do start off with Tampa Bay, then they're at Philadelphia, play the Chargers, at Carolina, play Kansas City, at Chicago, home for San Francisco, and then at Green Bay.
Gotcha.
I'm counting at Green Bay as a tough game too, but that's not that easy of a stretch to start the season. And the way too early, I had them 8-9. And since then, they cut or released Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
And you would think I would drop them down.
But you like Madison.
I still like Madison, and Dalvin Cook, has had injury issues, and that is a fumble. That is a fumble. If I've ever seen a fumble, good Lord, was that a fumble? And they called him down. Are you fucking kidding me? It was a beautiful tackle, put the shoulder on the ball, it popped out. Anyways. Oh no, they called it a fumble. Okay, good. I thought they called him down. Anyways. I like Madison. Delvin Cook had been injured, and I apologize for me being distracted.
You're fine.
I don't get to watch the Lions that often actually on TV.
So even if it's preseason, you're pumped. I get it.
Yeah. And that was a nice throw. Okay. I like Madison. I think Cousins is way underrated. I'm pissed about what they're doing to Cousins. Yeah, he might not have been signed by the current front office there, but he's still a consistently accurate quarterback.
Oh yeah.
And what are you going to do? Trade for Jordan Love? Because that's the only one that's going to be available in the offseason. You didn't trade for Trey Lance. What the fuck are you going to do?
Yeah. They're going to bring Teddy Bridgewater back. He's coming full circle, James.
Where's the flag on that? He slid. He shouldn't be. Anyways, 8-9 for Minnesota.
You're sticking with them at 8-9?
Yeah, I'm sticking with them at 8-9.
Okay. Yeah, and so my super early, I had them at 8-9 with you. My updated model actually dropped them down too. I got them at 6-11. I think they can outperform that, but basically what it's saying is that they're trending down in my book, and a lot of that is based on the defensive side of the ball, not the offensive side of the ball. So, okay, James, we got last but not least here, our one and only Detroit Lions. So let's just go through the roster moves. I'll take it nice and easy here. At quarterback, we drafted Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round. He's going to have a redshirt year, so we went out and we signed Teddy Bridgewater to back up Jared Goff. My opinion, the quarterback room is looking pretty good, and it has prospects for the future. I'm happy about that. At running back, we let Jamal Williams walk in free agency, and we backfilled him with David Montgomery. On paper, that is an upgrade, but Montgomery has been suspect. I'm talking lineups ratings. They got Jamal Williams at 78, Montgomery at an 83. But the bigger story is the drafting of Jamar Gibbs high in the 1st round. And so, and DeAndre Swift's gone too, by the way. We traded him, which is weird that my model didn't catch that. But either way, I think the running back room can be better, but it's unknown at this time. Swift had a ton of nagging injuries, and Williams, we kind of turned Williams into a bit of a sledgehammer. He was more versatile in Green Bay. He caught the ball more. He did more for them. We had him very focused on one role. Montgomery and Gibbs, the expectation is that they're both going to play a similar style of running and receiving out of the backfield, with Gibbs being more so receiving and a little bit more versatile. And so, I know Brad Holmes is super stoked about Gibbs, and I'm hoping it works out. At wide receiver, DJ Shark is gone. He went to Carolina, and I heard he just got hurt recently, by the way. Marvin Jones was brought back from Jacksonville. Kind of a wash at that spot. I think Shark, when healthy, probably a little better than Marvin Jones at this stage of his career, but Shark was always hurt. Marvin Jones, he'll be a reliable piece for us, and so I like that. At tight end, I don't have Hawkinson on here because he was a midseason trade last year, but we did go out and draft Sam Laporta in the 2nd round, and early offseason and early preseason, great reviews on Laporta. Recently, I'm hearing issues with drops and some things like that, which make me a little bit nervous. And so, um, tight end may be a little bit suspect for the Lions, but they found a way to make it work with unknown names last year. So I'm not totally worried about it. On the offensive line, Evan Brown is gone. On paper, he only had a 67 rating. I'm telling you, that guy was way more valuable to us with the way he helped supplement that offensive line. We did bring back Graham Glasgow. I do like that. I think that having him is I think he's a valuable backup. I'll just say that at this stage of his career. And so I liked us bringing him back. On the defensive line, Michael Brockers is gone. We drafted Broderick Martin in the third round. I've not heard a peep on this guy pretty much the whole offseason. And so I don't know what that means. Maybe just buried in the depth chart. At linebacker, we drafted Jack Campbell in the first round. Looks like he's going to be starting with Anzalone, and Malcolm Rodriguez is going to kind of be like a rotational sort of odd man out, which is okay, but I still think we need help at linebacker. In the secondary, Mike Hughes is gone, Amani Owarie is gone, and Jeff Okuda's gone. Each of these guys in different ways flashed a thing here or there, but ultimately was very underwhelming. We signed Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley, hoping for big things out of them. Their ratings are very similar to the guys that we lost, but PFF has had really good things to say about them, and so I'm hoping that it works out. At safety, Deshaun Elliott is gone. We signed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You know me, that's like one of my favorite signings. I thought that was amazing. I almost peed myself when he got hurt the other week. I'm glad he's okay. And then we also went out and we drafted safety Brian Branch in the second round. And he looks amazing so far, which is great because I was just telling one of our buddies, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is likely a one-year rental for us, and he's going to get big money somewhere. If all goes to plan, Brian Branch will succeed him, but both will find their way on the field in different ways this year because I'm hearing we're going to be creative and put our best guys out there, and both of them are showing that they should be out there. So looking top to down, James, I think we still need a wide receiver one. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I really believe that on a normal team, he is a high-end 2 or a really good slot guy. He's not a stretch the field guy. He's not a huge perimeter guy. I think we need a better wide receiver one. Could be Jameson Williams. I don't know. He's going to be out the first 6 weeks. And even then, I'm hearing problems with his hands. A lot of things going on there. Tight end, I think, is going to be a soft spot for us this year. It didn't seem to matter last year, so let's see if they can kind of like continue that. Defensive tackle is probably one of the biggest gaping holes right now, and we're seeing it in these stories about the Lions not being able to stop the run. I'm concerned with that. Outside linebacker, I'm concerned there. I like Anzalone. Maybe this combination of him and Campbell will work, but I just think we need more help at linebacker. And then at cornerback, I like the moves that we made, but I would like it better if we had a clear-cut CB1, and I'm just not getting that vibe out of anybody yet. And then, Riley Patterson was brought back at kicker. He does have less than a 75 rating on lineup, so I'm going to call it out. I do like Riley Patterson. My only concern is that he doesn't have the strongest of legs, but he is a good young kicker. And so my thought here is that for all the hype the Lions are getting, they've got a heck of a lot more holes than you would think. And so I'm trying to be cautious, but the model's going to do what the model's going to do. What are you thinking for the Lions here, James?
Oh, I'm full on drinking the Kool-Aid. Full on. And I hate myself
just not
for
even
it.
holding back.
Just full on. I have them starting the season 6-0. And it's somewhat of a brutal somewhat of a not too easy start of the season because I have number one, they're at Kansas City, but I have Seattle up there, I have Atlanta up there. Like those are their first three games. If they can get past that stretch at 2-1,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to be a phenomenal season. If they come out of that stretch at 1-2, it's going to be an abysmal season.
You think that's the deciding factor right there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the exact deciding factor because after that they have a bunch of teams that have as cakewalk at Green Bay, Carolina, at Tampa Bay, and then they play the rest. They play at Baltimore, Vegas, and then at the Chargers after the
Gotcha.
bye. And then they have an easy stretch. Chicago, Green Bay, Indianapolis, Chicago, Denver, Minnesota. So those first three games are going to be the key to the season. And if they go into the bye, see, at a minimum, they have to go into the bye at 4-4 or 5-3.
Okay.
If they can do that, then they have. I have them only losing 3 games after the bye. I have them losing to the Chargers. I have them losing at Dallas, and I have them losing to Minnesota because the game doesn't mean anything.
Gotcha. Okay. So you originally had them at 11-6.
I now have them at 12-5.
12-5. Okay. And so they were 9-8 last year. So you've got solid progress, and you've got them in the playoffs. I like it. So my super early had them at 11-6. You and I were mirrored. You took them up 1 game. I ended up taking them down 1 game. So I've now got them at 10-7, but I've still got them winning the North, and I've got them taking the 3 seed in the NFC, which is honestly, the NFC is just soft in my opinion. So
I have them as the worst division winner in the NFC because
Gotcha.
I have Atlanta at 13-4.
That's right,
as my 3 seed. I have San Francisco, Philly, Atlanta, Detroit, Dallas, New Orleans, New York Giants.
Gotcha. Okay. Okie dokie. Hokey pokey.
Other way. Dallas, New York Giants, New Orleans. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hey, that sounds good to me, man. I mean, like I said, and like you've said, makes me nervous that the Lions are getting all this hype. I think it's still an uphill battle, and it's a long season. Yeah, I'm excited for week 1 at Kansas City because I think that's going to tell us real quick, can we hang with a big dog or not? And I've told you before, I'm actually kind of worried that if we win that game, we're going to get cocky and it's going to blow up in our face. I'm hoping it's a close game where we lose, but we stay in the fight, because then it's like the team's going to know, shit, we were that close. We just got to work that much fucking harder. And that's what you want, is get that chip on their shoulder early when they're already on the cusp of making that move, and just keep them earning it every week, basically. So.
Mm-hmm. I have them winning that game. I have them winning that game 31-30.
It'd be. I mean, people would be streaking the D here, James.
Mm-hmm. And then, see, the good thing about one of them, I know. I want to check one thing about their 2022 schedule, because I think. Give me a second on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I don't think they have the ability to be cocky coming out after the Kansas City game, but I want to check. Because I know, so out of Kansas City, after Kansas City, they play Seattle, who they lost to last year, and that was the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. Then they play Atlanta. and I'm pretty sure they lost to Atlanta last year.
Okay.
No, they lost to Carolina last year. Okay. They didn't play Atlanta last year. They lost to Carolina last year. So, and then after Atlanta, they have Green Bay and then Carolina, who they did lose to last year. So you have two teams, really three teams that they're gonna be up for with Seattle, Green Bay, and Carolina because they lost to those teams last year, and that's what prevented them from making the playoffs. And I think a lot of the players on the roster will remember that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, where do you want to take it from here, man? Do you want to do our playoff predictions, or do you want to save that for maybe the tail end of our top 100 review next week, since that'll be like right before week one?
Let's save that because I have to do some work on my playoff predictions a little bit.
No, that's good with me, because honestly, I was thinking that if time permits, I might update my model one more time before week one, anyhow, and that could change some things. And so I like that. I like waiting. We want to have the most accurate information before we're making our Super Bowl picks. And so, all right, well, that's fine. So if you're good, we'll just move on over to question of the week. Is that cool?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so for question of the week tonight, James, I want to pose a question about the Green Bay Packers. We know that they were basically a dog shit team last year with Aaron Rodgers. Will the Jordan Love led Packers have a better record than last year's Aaron Rodgers led Packers? Both of us in our models are saying no, but I want to play devil's advocate a little bit and just kind of talk about the narrative and some of the other sort of like facts to the case here before we set it in stone. And so last year, the Packers went 8-9 with Rodgers. They put up 370 total points, which was good for 21.76 a game. Honestly, I didn't even think it was that high, so I was kind of impressed when I saw that. The bigger thing for me that stands out is that the previous two seasons, they won 13 games each year with Matt LaFleur head coach. The first year he was there, they went 13-3, where they ran the ball significantly, and Rodgers had one of his worst career years. The following year, they went 13-4. Rodgers was back to MVP status. And so it just makes me wonder that first year, can LaFleur get it done, focusing on the running game? We know they've got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who can both be forces on the ground, especially when used in tandem. The concern is Jordan Love, and I know you think he's dog shit. A lot of people that are analyzing him right now are saying he's not as bad as you think. He's actually looking pretty good, but you got to take it with a grain of salt because it's preseason. There's a lot of backups, a lot of plain vanilla defenses, and so I don't know, man. I think that there's like some narrative that could maybe support it, but I don't see how they could get past 8-9. And so I went into my model and I boosted Jordan Love, and that wasn't enough to get him to even 8 wins. I boosted some other players on the roster that I just felt like you could argue younger players developing, blah, blah, blah. And I still, at my very best, could only get them to 8-9, which just matches last year. And so in my model, the only possible way they could beat the Aaron Rodgers led team is if I boost guys and I also basically discount their opponents. And that's taking it too far, because that's like, hey, injuries and things like that happen, but they're unpredictable. And so for me, I'm saying no. I just don't think it can happen. It would require too much things to go in their favor and too many things to go against their opponents. And so that's just my opinion, but I think you have an interesting take on it that is separate from your predictions. And so why don't you tell me what you're thinking here, James?
Okay. Going in, I seem to have lost there it is. Going in, I was hell no. Then I read these Madden simulation stuff, which that has the Packers losing in the fucking NFC Championship game. And I read,
How?
I started looking into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Jaden Reed, rookie wide receiver. According to the simulation, he caught 105 passes for 1,250 yards and 9 touchdowns during the regular season, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
And then I started looking into Jordan Love. Jordan Love played college ball at Utah State. Who else played in that division or that conference in college? Josh Allen.
Okay.
And you start looking at the statistics. Josh Allen, his final year, only had 1,800 yards passing. He had 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Jordan Love in his final year had, 3,402 yards passing, 20 touchdowns.
So he's going to be twice as good as Josh Allen.
But 17 interceptions.
Okay.
In his college career, Jordan Love had 8,600 yards throwing, 60 touchdowns against 29 interceptions.
Gotcha.
Josh Allen didn't start as many games, not as comparable. 5,066 yards passing, 44 touchdowns, 21 interceptions.
Okay.
Is there a chance that people like you and me are wrong on Jordan Love and the Packers somehow are crazily right? Yes. The likelihood of that chance is not very high. But there is a comparable quarterback that currently plays in the league and is being successful in the league that had similar-ish statistics.
But also a very different style quarterback.
Not really.
Josh Allen, big-bodied, physical running, freaking rocket arm. I mean, I don't see Jordan Love running for 500 rushing yards.
Josh Allen, yes. He's an inch taller and 20 pounds heavier. Yes.
That's closer than I would have thought, though. That's closer than I would have thought right there.
So, 2017, both Jordan Love and Josh Allen were starters in the same league. Josh Allen played in 11 games. Jordan Love played in 12. Josh Allen had 152 receptions on 270 attempts, but only threw for 1,812 yards.
Okay.
Jordan Love had 129 receptions on 235 attempts and threw for 1,631 yards. It's very similar. The next in 18, which is comparable to Josh Allen's 2016 season, 3,200 yards for Josh Allen in 2016, 2017, 3,500 yards for Jordan Love, 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Yes, that version of Jordan Love may exist that is like Josh Allen.
But you're not seeing it.
but I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
Exactly. I don't think it's
I
I
think
think
he
that
can be
version
okay,
exists.
but I'm
I
not going to
think the
say he's
version
going to
ex
be good.
right. I think the version of Jordan Love, comparable stats wise, yes.
And there's a lot of good quarterbacks now. I'm hard pressed to see him scratch in the top 15.
And by the way, at the combine, the pre-draft measurements, Josh Allen and Jordan Love were only 13 pounds different.
Okay. Yeah, he's bigger than I thought he was. A lot bigger than I thought he
And
was.
they had almost an identical 40 yard. Wha- Two, four, like all this stuff is.
I mean, you're making a pretty good case here, James. You're making a pretty good case here. They talked a lot about him being compared to Mahomes coming out, not to Josh Allen. And, they talked about the raw potential being very Mahomes-esque.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where a lot of the disappointment comes because he has not been anywhere near that kind of a successful passer. But
Right.
maybe that's part of where he gets to have individual success is that maybe he runs the ball more this year and he catches defenses off guard because they're not expecting it. And he can emphasize a trait that most people aren't even looking at.
Which is possible. I haven't been able to find his rushing stats in college yet, but um, the
I mean, it
reason
just sounds
why,
like he's comparable to Josh Allen. So
yeah,
I'm,
well,
hypothetically, he could do it.
yeah. So like when I was starting to do the analysis, I tried to look for a quarterback that played in a comparable league
Yeah,
because it's the group of five, not the power five. So it's like the next tier down.
sure.
So so I wanted to find somebody that played in that lesser competition, and I was astonished by the stats, the similarity in the stats between Josh Allen and Jordan Love in
Oh,
college.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But you're saying no way, even though the
Uh,
simulation says that they could do it.
the simulation I think was on crack.
So this is just a random guy's simulation.
I don't know.
I mean, it
I
doesn't sound like this is like the official sanctioned Madden simulation.
but also apparently this guy's simulation has been right on.
3 years in a row.
3 years in a row. Last year, he predicted the Eagles in Kansas City. And the year before, he had the Rams over the Bengals. And the year before, he had the Bucks over the Chiefs.
Okay, okay. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I don't know if he had everything all correct on it, but
Just the end result.
the end result.
Hey, it's all good, man. All right, so yeah, I guess bringing it back, we're saying it's not going to happen. It's a stretch. It would definitely turn the NFC upside down if they could be better, but we've got them at the bottom. Um, okay, well that gets us through all of our conference division outlooks, everything for this year. Next week we're going to be doing our NFL Top 100 review. I know you've got some opinions on that. Do you have any closing thoughts for tonight, man?
I don't think so.
Okay. I see you looking at the game, so I'll wrap it up
No,
here.
I looked over the game because I didn't realize the Lions were up 20-10
Oh, nice. It's
at the start of
preseason,
the
but we'll take a win if we can get it.
start of the third quarter. So
Yeah.
And
Well,
Matt
hey,
Corral's
yeah.
in the
So
game.
for anybody who's watching, we hope you like the show. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Helps us out big time. Next week, we're jumping into the NFL Top 100 list. We want to review it, find some discrepancies in our expert, quote unquote, expert opinions, because we're not really experts. But and then after that, it's going to be week one power rankings and game picks. And so, yeah, if you like it, keep checking us out. And if you don't, hey, check us out anyhow, because we want you to. So, James, like always, man, it was fun. I'll catch you later, man.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.